Hello everyone, before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It is quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Now, let us return to our main character. The title of today's story is A Marriage Built on Paper and Broken Rules. It began on a rainy Thursday night, high above the skyline of Seattle. The boardroom of Skyward Logistics was empty except for one man, Adrian Cole, the 35-year-old CEO known for his precision, his silence, and the walls he built around his life. His reflection stared back from the glass wall, the city lights flickering across his sharp features like fragments of broken promises. He had spent the last 12 hours in negotiations that ended with one brutal sentence: marry within the month or lose control of his company to the investors waiting like wolves. The words of his late father echoed in his mind, about legacy and leadership, but all he could hear now was the ticking of a clock and the sound of rain tapping against the window. Then the elevator dinged. Lina Tran stepped out, her boots leaving wet prints on the marble floor. She smelled faintly of engine oil and cold air. Her hands were calloused, her nails chipped, her jacket 2 sizes too big. Adrian looked at her, the woman who had just spent the afternoon begging the bank not to seize her father's auto repair shop. She had no reason to be here, except desperation. And he, for the first time in years, was desperate too. "You are late," he said evenly, sliding a folder across the table. Inside lay a single sheet of paper, crisp and precise. "This is a contract. A marriage contract." Lina blinked, unsure she had heard him right. "A what?" Adrian's voice did not rise. "A marriage built on terms. You help me stabilize my company's image for 6 weeks, I pay off your debts and sign over your father's shop to your name." She let out a nervous laugh that died halfway. "You are serious." "Completely," he replied. "It is a transaction. Not romance." She crossed her arms. "You are asking a stranger to marry you." "No," Adrian said quietly, "I am asking a woman who understands what it means to fight for something worth saving." Silence stretched between them. The rain outside grew heavier. Lina stared at the papers, her reflection trembling in the slick black table. Every rational part of her wanted to walk out, but then she remembered the red eviction notice taped to her garage door, the photo of her father smiling beside his rusted toolbox. "What are the rules?" she asked softly. Adrian's eyes met hers. "Simple," he said. "No love. No intimacy. No interference in my work. You attend 5 events as my wife, and after that, we go our separate ways." He leaned forward, his voice calm, almost gentle. "If we play it right, no one gets hurt." Lina hesitated, her heart thudding against her ribs. She had fixed broken engines, patched leaking roofs, carried too many burdens for one life, but this? This was something she could not repair once it began. Still, she picked up the pen. "Fine," she whispered. "Let us both get what we need." Adrian's gaze flicked to her hand as she signed her name with shaking fingers. He reached into his pocket and placed a small silver key beside the contract. "This is the key to your father's shop. Consider it collateral." She swallowed hard, realizing this was not just a deal, it was a line neither of them could uncross. The storm outside roared louder, thunder echoing through the glass walls as Adrian signed beside her name. He closed the folder slowly, as if sealing their fates. "Congratulations, Mrs. Cole," he said quietly. "Welcome to your new life." Lina looked up, her breath trembling. "Let us hope we both survive it." And just like that, with ink, silence, and a storm, their paper marriage began. The following morning, Lina woke up in a different world. The penthouse Adrian provided was larger than her entire street back home. The walls were glass, the floors polished marble, and every corner smelled of new money. Yet she could not breathe. The silence was too clean, too measured. She missed the clang of tools, the hum of engines, the laughter from her father's garage. On the dining table, a note in Adrian's precise handwriting waited for her. Breakfast at 8. Fitting at 10. We attend the board gala this evening. Dress accordingly. Lina read it twice, rolling her eyes. He even signed with a single letter, as if emotion was beneath him. She opened the fridge and found rows of bottled water arranged by label color. It felt like living inside a catalog. By the time she met him in the lobby, he was already in a tailored suit, adjusting his cufflinks like armor. "You are punctual," he said without looking up. "You gave me no reason not to be," she replied. His gaze flicked toward her outfit: jeans, boots, and a plain shirt. "You cannot attend a corporate gala looking like that." Lina raised a brow. "Then maybe you should not have married a mechanic." For a heartbeat, something like amusement softened his features, but it vanished as quickly as it came. The next hours blurred into a montage of transformation. A stylist named Miriam led Lina through racks of silk and sequins, her calloused hands brushing against fabrics she had never dared to touch. Makeup artists spoke in hushed tones about contour and posture, about elegance as if it were a language she had never learned. When she looked at herself in the mirror hours later, she barely recognized the woman staring back. "Beautiful," Miriam whispered. "He will be proud." Lina forced a smile, but inside, she wondered what pride had to do with any of this. That evening, the car ride to the gala was steeped in silence. The city glowed below them, a river of gold and glass. Adrian sat beside her, eyes fixed on his phone, the glow painting sharp lines across his jaw. "You look different," he said finally. "Different good or different bad?" "Different," he said again, and that was all. The ballroom of the Grand Meridian Hotel was a sea of champagne laughter and expensive perfume. Cameras flashed as Adrian guided her inside, his hand hovering near her back but never quite touching. Whispers rippled through the crowd. Everyone wanted to see the wife of Skyward's most elusive CEO. The first cut came fast. A silver-haired investor with a smile like a blade leaned close and said, "You must be the lucky one. Adrian has an interesting taste in charity work." Lina froze. Before she could reply, Adrian turned sharply. His voice was calm but edged with steel. "Mr. Kent, my wife is not a charity case. She is the reason my trucks still move through the storm season. Without people like her, none of us would be drinking champagne tonight." The crowd fell silent for a beat. Kent's smirk faltered. Lina stared at Adrian, surprise flickering behind her eyes. He defended her not because of pity, but with respect. As the night went on, she found herself watching him more closely: the way he listened, the way he avoided small talk, how his fingers tapped once against his glass whenever he was bored or irritated. Under the perfect control, there was something raw, almost human. Near midnight, as the ballroom emptied and rain began to fall again outside, Lina stepped onto the terrace. The city below shimmered, alive with headlights and wet streets. Adrian joined her quietly, his tie loosened, a rare sign of fatigue. "You handled yourself well tonight," he said. "I did not punch anyone," she replied dryly. "That is progress." A faint smile tugged at his lips. For a moment, they stood there in the soft rain, two people bound by paper but stitched together by circumstance. "You think this will work?" she asked, eyes still on the skyline. "It has to," he said. "For both of us." She nodded, though she was not sure what working meant anymore. The thunder rolled across the horizon, low and distant, like a promise neither of them understood. And for the first time since she signed that contract, Lina wondered if this man, this stranger in a suit, was hiding more than just his loneliness behind the fine print. Days turned into weeks, and the contract that once seemed like a business arrangement began to feel like a quiet storm building behind closed doors. Lina moved through Adrian's world like a shadow, learning new steps. Every morning, she joined him for breakfast, seated across a table long enough to fit 6 people but shared by only 2. He always read the financial section, sipping his black coffee in silence. She preferred tea and stared at the city below, wondering how long she could live in a place where everything looked perfect but felt cold. One morning, as she poured herself another cup, Adrian looked up from his tablet. "The shareholders' meeting is tomorrow. You will need to attend." Lina blinked. "Me? I thought the gala was enough." "You are my wife," he replied evenly. "Optics matter." His words were precise, professional, but something about the way his eyes lingered on her made it less of a command and more of a plea. The next day, the meeting unfolded in the top-floor conference hall, surrounded by glass and tension. Dozens of investors sat in rows, murmuring among themselves. Lina stayed near the back, feeling out of place in her borrowed blazer. Midway through the presentation, a voice cut through the air like a knife. "Mr. Cole, your sudden marriage raises questions about stability. Some of us wonder if it is genuine or strategic." The room stirred. Adrian froze for a heartbeat, his jaw tightening. Before he could answer, Lina stood. "It is both," she said, her voice clear and steady. "It is genuine because I believe in him, and strategic because every strong partnership is built on purpose." All eyes turned to her. She smiled faintly, meeting their doubt with calm. "The man you question built this company from nothing but a dock and a dream. You want stability? You are looking at it." A hush fell. Adrian looked at her, something unreadable flickering behind his calm mask. Respect, surprise, maybe pride. After the meeting, as they walked down the corridor, he said quietly, "You did not have to do that." "You did not have to let them treat me like furniture," she replied. For a moment, their eyes met, and neither looked away. That night, Adrian found her on the penthouse balcony, sitting with her knees drawn up, hair tousled by the wind. "You hate this world, do you not?" he asked. She shrugged. "I hate how quiet it is. No grease, no music, no people yelling over broken engines. Just glass and numbers." He leaned against the railing beside her, sleeves rolled up, the city lights painting his profile in silver and gold. "Numbers are predictable," he said. "People are not." "Is that why you made rules about not falling in love?" she asked softly. Adrian's expression tightened, but he did not answer. The silence that followed was heavy and electric. Then, almost without thinking, he said, "When my father died, I learned that love and loyalty are not the same. Contracts do not break promises, people do." Lina turned toward him, her voice gentler now. "Maybe you have just been reading the wrong contracts." He let out a quiet breath that sounded almost like a laugh. For a moment, neither of them spoke. The rain began again, light and steady, tapping on the railing. Without words, he slipped off his jacket and draped it over her shoulders. It smelled faintly of cedar and cologne, warm against her cold skin. "You did not have to," she murmured. "I know," he said simply, "but I wanted to." When she looked up, he was already walking back inside, his reflection fading behind the glass door. That night, Lina lay awake in the wide, unfamiliar bed, staring at the ceiling. The rules had been clear, written in ink and sealed with logic. No love. No emotion. No mess. Yet every gesture, every glance, every quiet defense was starting to blur those lines. Somewhere between the lies they told the world and the truths they hid from themselves, something real was beginning to breathe. And for the first time, Lina wondered if she was already breaking the one rule that mattered most. The rain had stopped by morning, but the silence between them had not. Days passed with the kind of quiet that weighed more than words. Adrian buried himself in work, spending long nights in the office, while Lina moved through the penthouse like a ghost wearing borrowed luxury. Yet something had shifted. She no longer felt like an intruder. She started leaving small traces of herself around the placia mug with grease fingerprints, a half-finished sketch on the counter, a potted plant by the window that had never known sunlight before. Adrian noticed every one of them, though he pretended not to. One evening, she found him asleep on the couch, still in his suit, his laptop dim beside him. The harsh CEO lines had softened in sleep, his hair slightly messy, his breathing slow and human. Without thinking, she fetched a blanket and draped it over him. When he stirred, eyes half open, she whispered, "Go back to sleep, boss." He smiled faintly before drifting off again, and she realized she had never seen him smile without control. The next morning, breakfast felt different. He looked at her longer than usual. "You did not have to," he said quietly. "You were cold," she replied. "That is all." But it was not all, and both of them knew it. That week, Adrian invited her to accompany him on a site visit to the docks where his company began. It was windy, loud, alive, the opposite of the sterile boardrooms she had come to hate. Workers greeted him with hesitant respect, but when they saw Lina by his side, smiling and shaking hands, they relaxed. She moved easily among them, joking about tools and engines, her laughter cutting through the industrial noise like sunlight on metal. Adrian watched from a few steps away, something in his chest tightening. She belonged here far more naturally than he ever had. Later, as they stood near the cranes watching the sunset burn orange over the water, he spoke softly. "You make them remember why I built this place." She turned toward him, surprised by the warmth in his voice. "And why is that?" "Because I wanted to build something that worked," he said, glancing at her, "not just something that made money." For a moment, the air between them felt fragile and alive. She met his eyes, then looked away before the moment could turn into something the contract forbade. That night, they drove back in silence, but the tension hung beneath every glance. When they reached the penthouse, she thanked him for the trip and turned to leave, but he stopped her. "Lina," he said quietly, "you do not have to thank me for doing what I should have done long ago." "And what is that?" she asked. "Listening," he replied. The simplicity of it hit harder than any confession. She nodded slowly, unable to find words. Later, she stood by the window alone, watching his reflection behind her as he poured 2 glasses of wine. He handed her one and said, "To partnerships that work." She raised her glass. "Even fake ones?" "Especially those," he said, and they both laughed too softly, too carefully. The laughter faded, replaced by a silence that felt like gravity. His eyes lingered on hers a heartbeat too long, and she felt her pulse trip over itself. She looked away first, setting her glass down before she did something she could not undo. The city lights shimmered below them, mirrored in the glass walls like 1,000 witnesses. For the rest of the night, neither could sleep. Lina lay awake, replaying every glance, every word, every unspoken promise. Adrian sat in his office, staring at the contract lying on his desk, the lines about no love, no intimacy, no interference. He had written them to protect himself, but now they felt like a cage he had built with his own hands. Outside, the wind returned, rattling the windows. Somewhere between guilt and longing, both of them realized that rules were easier to sign than to follow, and hearts were never meant to obey ink on paper. The marriage built on conditions was starting to unravel into something dangerously real. By the end of the month, the lines between contract and connection had nearly disappeared. Lina had learned Adrian's rhythms, the way he stirred his coffee 3 times before drinking, the way he rubbed his temple when he lied about being fine, the way he stared out the window at night as if trying to remember who he used to be. He had learned her too, the soft hum she made when concentrating, her stubborn refusal to ask for help, her habit of fixing broken things that did not belong to her. One morning, the air in the penthouse felt tense. Adrian had a meeting with the board scheduled at noon, a presentation meant to secure the company's next major deal. Lina offered to attend, but he declined. "It will be hostile," he said. "I do not want you caught in it." "I can handle hostile," she replied. "I have rebuilt engines in worse conditions." He gave a faint smile but said nothing more. The meeting turned out to be a battlefield. Cassandra Vale, the company's chief financial officer, had been circling for weeks. She was sharp, ambitious, and quietly resentful that Adrian's sudden marriage had made headlines instead of her upcoming promotion. That afternoon, she struck. "We have received inquiries about the authenticity of your marriage, Mr. Cole," she said, her voice calm but cruel. If this relationship was fabricated to stabilize investor confidence, it could be considered fraud. Adrian's composure barely faltered. Our marriage is legitimate. Cassandra leaned forward. Then you will not mind if we ask your wife to attend the shareholders' forum tomorrow and speak for herself. The trap was set. When Adrian returned home that night, Lina was on the balcony, hair dancing in the wind. He told her everything, his tone even but his eyes clouded. They want to humiliate you, he said quietly. You do not have to go. If I do not, they will think you are hiding something, she replied. If I do, they will think you trained me to lie. Then let them think what they want, he snapped, frustration breaking through his usual restraint. This is not your fight. Yes, it is, she said, stepping closer. You married me to protect your company. Let me protect you for once. The words silenced him. For a moment, neither moved. Then he said softly, you do not understand what you are walking into. She smiled sadly. I understand enough. I have been underestimated my entire life. The next day, the forum buzzed with cameras and questions. Lina walked in beside Adrian, wearing a simple navy dress instead of designer silk. Her confidence drew attention before she even spoke. When Cassandra called her to the stage, Lina stood tall. Mrs. Cole, Cassandra said smoothly, some believe your marriage is a performance. Would you say it is real? Lina looked directly at the crowd, then at Adrian. It began on paper, she said clearly, but real things rarely start perfectly. You build them. You fight for them. You grow into them. The room quieted. She continued, her voice steady. I did not marry a CEO. I married a man who forgot why he started this company: give people work, dignity, and purpose. He reminded me that contracts can bind two people legally, but only trust makes them partners. Murmurs rippled through the audience. Cassandra tried to interrupt, but Adrian stepped forward, his voice calm and cold. This interrogation ends now. Cameras flashed. The forum moderator called for a break, and reporters surged toward them. Adrian took Lina's hand, ignoring the whispers. You should not have had to do that, he said under his breath. Neither should you, she replied. As they reached the car, he looked at her, eyes darker than the storm rolling in behind them. You are making it very difficult to remember the rules, he said quietly. Lina smiled faintly. Maybe that is the point. For a moment, the world felt suspended. The contract that had once defined their every move now felt like a thin thread compared to what had grown between them. As thunder echoed across the skyline, Adrian realized that what started as protection had turned into something he could not control. And Lina, sitting beside him in the car, felt the same truth pressing at her chest. Somewhere between pretending and feeling, they had already crossed the line. The storm outside had lasted through the night, and by morning, the city was wrapped in fog. Lina stood by the window of the penthouse, watching drops of rain slide down the glass. The sound was soft, almost hypnotic, but her heart was far from calm. She kept replaying yesterday's forum in her head, the words she had spoken, the way Adrian had looked at her when she stood beside him. Something had changed between them, something too real to fit inside the borders of a contract. When Adrian emerged from his office, his shirt sleeves were rolled up, his expression unreadable. You did well yesterday, he said. You saved my company's reputation. Lina turned toward him slowly. I was not saving your company. I was saving you. That made him pause. He looked at her, and for the first time, there was no distance in his eyes. You should not care that much, he said softly. You made that one of the rules, remember, she replied. The corner of his mouth lifted. Maybe some rules were meant to be broken. The air between them tightened like a drawn string. For a moment, neither spoke. Then he exhaled, stepping back, his tone shifting. We have the charity gala tonight. The one the press has been waiting for. The same press that questioned if our marriage is real, she asked. Exactly. They will be looking for cracks. We need to play the part. Lina nodded, though her chest ached at the word, play. That evening, the ballroom glowed under chandeliers, 1,000 cameras flashing like stars. Lina wore a deep emerald gown that shimmered with every movement. Adrian stood beside her in a black tuxedo, the picture of composed success. To the crowd, they were flawless, a power couple. But under the bright lights, the truth was far less perfect. Between interviews, Adrian leaned toward her and whispered, "If this feels like too much, just tell me." "I am fine," she whispered back. "I have faced worse than people in designer shoes." He almost laughed but stopped when Cassandra approached, her smile sharp as glass. "Beautiful dress, Mrs. Cole," she said. "I hope it was worth the price." Lina smiled politely. "I think the real question is, who paid for your dignity tonight?" Gasps rippled around them, and Cassandra's smile faltered. Adrian's lips twitched, fighting a smirk. As Cassandra retreated, he murmured, "Remind me never to underestimate you." "You already did," Lina said softly. Hours later, when the ballroom emptied and music faded, they slipped out to the terrace overlooking the bay. The moon hung low, the air cool and heavy with salt. Adrian loosened his tie, his voice low. "You were incredible tonight." "You mean convincing," she said. "No," he replied. "I mean incredible." The honesty in his tone startled her. She turned toward him, her heart stumbling. He took a step closer. "You keep fixing things," he said quietly, "even the parts of me that were never broken by accident." She swallowed hard. "Adrian, do not what?" he asked, his voice softer now. "Do not make this harder," she said. "We both know what we signed." "We signed paper," he said. "Not our hearts." The words landed like thunder. For a moment, the world narrowed to the space between them, the sound of their breaths, the wind, the faint hum of the city below. He reached out, brushing a strand of hair from her face, his fingers trembling slightly. "Tell me to stop, and I will," he whispered. She could not. Instead, she stood frozen, every unspoken feeling rising like a wave she could no longer hold back. But before either of them could cross that invisible line, a voice called from behind them. "Mr. Cole." It was his assistant, holding out a phone. "You need to see this." Adrian frowned, taking it. His expression hardened. Cassandra's face appeared on the screen, giving a statement to the press, a thin smile playing on her lips. "The truth will come out soon," she said to reporters. "That so-called marriage is nothing but a corporate facade. The documents will prove everything." The footage cut, and silence followed. Lina felt her stomach drop. "She has the contract," Adrian said, voice flat. "She is going to expose everything." He turned to Lina, his calm cracking for the first time. "We have to stop her before this destroys both of us." Lina met his eyes, her fear quickly replaced by resolve. "Then we stop her," she said. The city lights flickered in the distance, thunder rolling once more over the bay. The storm was back, but this time, it was not outside. It was between them, and it was only beginning. The next 48 hours unfolded like a war fought behind glass doors. Cassandra's leaked statement spread across every news outlet, headlines screaming about fraud, deceit, and a marriage built on lies. Reporters camped outside Skyward's headquarters, cameras flashing whenever Adrian appeared. He moved through the chaos with quiet fury, issuing denials, contacting lawyers, and locking down every trace of the contract. But Cassandra was careful. She released fragments just enough to wound. By the third day, investors demanded an emergency vote to strip him of his position. In the middle of the storm, Lina watched from the sidelines, powerless but determined. She could not stand the sight of him breaking under pressure. That evening, she walked into his office, where he stood by the window, staring at the skyline like a man calculating his fall. "You cannot fight her with silence," she said. Adrian turned, exhaustion shadowing his face. "Anything I say will sound like a lie now." Then let me speak, Lina said. Let me tell them what this really was and what it became. No, he said sharply. You do not owe me your reputation. It is already tied to yours, she replied, stepping closer. So let me decide what it is worth. He looked at her for a long time, then turned away. You do not understand what she wants. Cassandra has been building this trap for months. If she can prove the marriage was strategic, she will take control of the board. Then give her something she does not expect, Lina said. The truth. Adrian almost laughed, but it sounded hollow. The truth does not matter to people who already chose their side. It matters to me, she said. That silenced him. For a moment, the noise of the city seemed to fade, leaving only the sound of rain against glass. Finally, he said quietly, she will go public with the documents tomorrow morning. Then tomorrow, Lina said, we tell our side first. She left before he could argue. That night, she barely slept. By dawn, reporters gathered at the Skyward building again, their voices blending into the storm outside. When the press conference began, Adrian stood at the podium, calm and deliberate. But before he could speak, Lina stepped forward. Her voice was steady, cutting through the noise. Yes, the marriage began as a contract, she said. Gasps filled the room. But no contract could have made us stand together when it all fell apart. No piece of paper could make a man choose integrity over profit. Cameras flashed. Adrian stared at her, speechless. We built something real out of something broken, she continued. And if that is fraud, then love itself is guilty. The room fell silent. Cassandra's team scrambled, realizing too late that the narrative had shifted. Adrian took Lina's hand in front of everyone. I was wrong to think rules could protect us, he said softly. The only thing worth protecting was you. The reporters shouted questions, but the story had already changed course. The truth, stripped of polish and lies, had become their only weapon, and together, they had just fired the first shot. The fallout from the press conference was immediate and relentless. Within hours, every major news channel aired Lina's speech, dissecting every word. Some called her brave. Others called her foolish. But no one could deny that her honesty had changed the tone of the story. Adrian's legal team worked overnight, building a case against Cassandra. When the board convened for the emergency vote, the air in the conference room was electric. Adrian stood tall at the head of the table, calm but defiant, while Cassandra sat across from him with the cold smile of someone who believed she had already won. Before we begin, Adrian said, his voice clear, I want to address the accusations. Yes, my marriage began under unusual terms. But what it became is proof that human loyalty cannot be bought or staged. He looked around the room, his gaze unwavering. You may strip me of my title, but you will not strip this company of its integrity. Murmurs spread across the table. Cassandra smirked, sliding a folder toward the chairman. Integrity? Here is your integrity. A copy of the original contract signed and dated. Proof that everything he said is a fabrication. But before the chairman could open it, a voice came from the doorway. Actually, that document no longer exists. Every head turned. Lina stood there, calm, holding a charred folder in her hand. You wanted evidence? Here it is, she said, dropping it onto the table. The only contract between us that matters now is built on trust. Cassandra's expression hardened. You destroyed legal evidence, she hissed. Lina met her glare. No, I destroyed chains. The room fell into stunned silence. Adrian stepped beside her, his voice steady. This company was built on the backs of workers who believed in something greater than numbers. That belief is what I will protect even if it costs me everything. The chairman exchanged looks with the other members. Then, after a long pause, he spoke. Mr. Cole, Mrs. Cole, the board has heard enough. We will not proceed with a vote today. The accusations are withdrawn. Cassandra's face drained of color. She tried to speak, but no one listened. Her empire of lies had collapsed in the light of truth. Outside, the rain finally stopped. Adrian and Lina walked out of the building together, the storm clouds breaking above them to reveal a pale stretch of blue sky. Reporters shouted questions, flashes exploded, but he did not stop. He took her hand in full view of the world and said quietly, "You could have let me fall." "I was tired of watching you stand alone," she replied. The simplicity of her words cut deeper than any declaration. As they reached the car, Adrian turned back to look at the building one last time. "You know," he said softly, "for the first time in years, I feel free." Lina smiled faintly. "Freedom looks good on you." The cameras captured that image, two people who had burned their past and chosen to build something real from the ashes. For once, there was no contract, no pretense, and no storm left to fear. 3 months later, the city was warmer, quieter, and filled with a peace that neither of them had known in years. The scandal that once threatened to destroy everything had faded into a story people no longer whispered about. Skyward Logistics had recovered, stronger than before, because truth had a way of rebuilding what lies tried to ruin. Adrian stepped out of his car and walked toward the small auto shop near the docks. The old sign still read Tran's Repairs, freshly painted, gleaming under the afternoon sun. Inside, the scent of oil and steel filled the air, familiar, grounding, real. Lina was under the hood of a truck, her hair tied back, grease smudged across her cheek. When she heard footsteps, she looked up and smiled. "You are late," she said. "I had a board meeting," he replied, setting down a small paper bag. "They offered me a full-term contract as CEO again." "And?" she asked, wiping her hands on a cloth. Adrian leaned against the counter, watching her. "I turned it down." She froze, surprised. "You what?" "I told them I am done building empires I cannot live in," he said simply. "Besides, I have a better project now." He opened the bag and pulled out a small wooden box. Inside was the silver key, the same one he had given her the night they first signed the contract. It had been cleaned and engraved with her name. "You once told me this was collateral," he said softly. "Now it is a promise." She looked at the key, her throat tightening. "A promise for what?" "For whatever we choose next," he said. "No contracts, no deadlines, just life." For a long moment, neither spoke. The hum of the city outside blended with the rhythm of her heartbeat. She stepped closer, her voice low. "Adrian, I never thought we would get here." He smiled faintly. "Neither did I." He reached for her hand, the same one that had once signed away her freedom and now held it back. "Lina Tran, will you stay not as my business partner, not as my contract wife, but as the person I choose, every day, without terms?" Her eyes glistened, but she smiled through it. "Only if you promise to let me fix your truck when it breaks." "Deal," he said, laughing softly. The sound felt new, honest, and free. Outside, the afternoon light poured through the windows, catching the dust in golden streaks. He set the burned remains of their old contract on the workbench beside the key. "Let it stay here," he said quietly. "As a reminder of what we almost lost." She nodded, slipping her hand into his. "And what we found." As they stood together among the tools and machines, the city hummed with the sound of life moving forward. No cameras, no headlines, no storm, just two people who had turned paper into purpose, rules into trust, and a fake marriage into something that could finally be called real. Their story had begun with ink and ended with choice. A marriage built on paper, but sealed, at last, by love.